Yo, this hot, this the spot, there it is, pod.com. We're interviewing the best comedians, so tune in quick and get your ears receiving them. We talking about life and life to stream right to you, from the microphone right to your home, dude. Side note, this might get embarrassing, but no, don't sweat, yo, cause there it is.
Welcome to the There It Is podcast, a comedy podcast to help you find your inspiration. I'm your host, Jason Farr. Let's do this. Great episode for you today. Will Hines is on. Very excited about that. And if this is your first time listening, thank you. We have over 140 episodes you can check out on Apple Podcasts and SoundCloud. We also have a free newsletter offering comedy news, tips on comedy, health, and life, inspiration, and more. We also just posted a blog on our website of every comedy festival with open submissions in October, links in bio for the newsletter and the festival blog. And before we get to today's guest, I do want to share a couple of cool things with you. I just got back from Cincinnati with my Magnet House team Sweetheart, which was renewed for a new season. But we were there for the Cincinnati Improv Festival, also known as If Cincy, and it was great. We met such great people. It's a really cool city. I'd never been there, and we saw some amazing teams. So thank you, Cincinnati, for showing us a good time. And the other big news is that girlfriend of the show, Justina, was cast on a new team at the Magnet, and I am beside myself. It's not just any team. I mean, this team is stacked with talent and lovely people, and two of our closest friends here who are also on our indie team, Boyf, are on her house team, so I'm just very excited. The beginning of seasons are always exciting, and I'm really looking forward to the new lineup for Megawatt at Magnet this season. So come see us at the Magnet on Wednesdays. Justina's team is performing this week at 7, and mine is performing at 9. Now, let's get on to today's episode. I got to talk to one of the UCB greats, Will Hines. He's a very popular performer and instructor at UCB, and he's been in a bunch of stuff. You've probably seen him. He's been on Broad City, Arrested Development, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and he's in the new Netflix movie, Between Two Ferns, the movie. And we have a really great discussion about improv, his book, performing on Comedy Bang Bang, and just performing in general. We talk about how awesome Scott Aukerman's memory is. Scott Aukerman. So let's just get right to it. Here's my chat with Will Hines. You have been going on Comedy Bang Bang for years now, and I feel like you've been on a lot recently, which has been great because you're great on there.
Oh, thanks. I feel really lucky to be on Comedy Bang Bang. It kind of happened like my friend Sean Clemens, who does an Earwolf podcast called Hollywood Handbook, got me on his podcast, the same episode that Scott Aukerman, the host of Comedy Bang Bang, was doing it. And so I met Scott. Then I got to do it a couple of times, and somehow Scott just likes me on the show. And it's like really, really fun. Like Comedy Bang Bang is one of those kind of like comedy cred things, like a lot of savvy comedy fans and comedy nerds like Bang Bang. And so like being on it kind of like ups my cred, maybe beyond just where like my pure acting credits are. You know, like I've done the UCB theater forever, you know, like basically since the beginning. But outside of that like world, you know, I haven't always done a lot. So Bang Bang is one of the places that's let me extend I don't know, my rep a little bit.
Yeah.
And the show is like super fun. It's like really easy and fun to do. There's zero prep. You sit down and you almost start recording immediately. Aukerman doesn't ask to know anything before the show except how to introduce you. And it's great. And I think, I don't know this for sure, but I believe that I am sort of I'm on Scott's list of people who can do the show like last minute. So like if somebody, you know, cancels or whatever, he can email me and I'll be like, I'll be there in half an hour. I mean, it's rarely day of notice, but it has been that. He's like texted me at like 10 a.m. or something to come to the show at noon. And I'm down for that. I like being the when an emergency break glass and Will Hines will do your podcast guest.
Yeah.
You know, I love it. It's like it's super fun.
Yeah, it's super cool. I have heard a little bit about the process there, and I didn't know that it was specifically that he just asks them how to be introduced.
It's just like how to introduce you. He has an incredible memory, so if you've
he does.
done the character before, he'll know it.
I always wonder when he goes into those details, is he reading from something because his memory is insane?
Yeah, I think he does have a really good memory. I think he also just like loves doing the show. It's just like he has legit joy doing it, so he is fully invested in the way that you are invested when you like doing something. I think he's just down.
That's incredible because honestly, and I appreciated him anyway, but I am gobsmacked or whatever the right word is that he is able to recall. Yeah, it's a good. But the fact that he's able to recall some of the details that he throws out, that's unreal.
Yeah, for any Comedy Bang Bang fans listening, I'll tell you that the show is as cool as you think. Like, it's just fun people who are very casual. Everybody is. I've never had even a 1% bad experience.
Oh, that's great.
It is kind of like, in a good way, like a little club. I mean, like, here's the weird thing is like, I'm out in Hollywood and I'm very conscious of like who's doing well and who's not, like who's sort of famous and who's not or whatever. And so you might do a show with like David Cross or something like that, or James Adomian or something, or Lauren Lapkus. But everybody's just super chill. It's like nobody brings that status around with them when you're doing it. It's easy and fun.
Yeah.
And if I see any Earwolf folks around LA, I know them because of Bang Bang, and that's really chill. It's really nice. Aukerman's like done my podcast. I have a couple podcasts which are incredibly small. They're not even comedy. I do one about the Beatles and one about comic books. And Aukerman is a big comic book fan and a Spider-Man fan in particular. And he came on it as a guest.
Yeah, he's written.
He's written some issues of Spidey. And so like he is like a big podcast name. It's a boost to my podcast. We're also friends. It's nice to have him on. So there's that kind of camaraderie that happens, and I dig it. I'm down for it.
That's really cool. I really appreciate so many people who go on Comedy Bang Bang and Aukerman as well, of course. And I am wondering, because I've not really heard what the process is from the character's point of view or the improviser's point of view of developing character. How much thought is put into it, generally speaking, going in?
Well, I'm probably a bad person to ask because I'm terrible at characters. Like, what I do for Bang Bang is like I don't think what normal people do. Basically, I think of an occupation. And I try to think of a silly thing that character wants to promote, and then I don't think of anything else. And I just try to say yes to every question asked of me and then justify it. Like, I have no idea where it's going to go when I start. I'll have a very slim idea of the first thing to talk about. I'll be like, all right, when I get on there, I'm going to be like a motorcycle fan, and I'm going to want to be talking about how I want to promote motorcycle riding across the country. And I think more people should be into riding their motorcycle, right? Like, not even a comedy idea. And I'll vaguely know that I'm going to be a little bit of a dirt bag and kind of a scummy guy, but I'll be proud of it. And I'm like, okay, that'll be enough. And then, people start asking you questions. They'll be like, do you only ride bikes? Do you ever ride cars? I'll be like, they'll be like, you never ride cars, right? I'll be like, never. Cars are for the weak or whatever. And then, I don't know. 20 minutes go by and I've constructed an insane biography of something. I asked John Gabris once how to do Comedy Bang Bang because he's so successful on it.
He's so good on there, yeah.
Yeah, what he told me was just have an accent and improvise. He was like, do not prepare a lot.
So success on Comedy Bang Bang isn't so different than success in improv in general.
No, in fact, I think it'd be better. It's better to under prepare. I mean, some people just have a knack for having a voice and building a character out of it. But like, the simpler, the better. You want room to evolve. You don't want to come in with everything sewed up. Like I think you want to try to say yes and bend. I mean, that show gets real silly. Like
It does, yeah.
I also do Improv for Humans with Matt Besser sometimes.
Right.
And that one is more like disciplined improv. It's more like you do say no as in character if it breaks like top of your intelligence stuff. And Improv for Humans is kind of, I think, better improv to like learn from, and Comedy Bang Bang is sort of like more pure fun. And
and you learn in a whole different way.
It's a different thing. It's like learning how to joke around with comedians, and Improv for Humans is like how to make better improv, I think.
Interesting. So when you mentioned how to say no or saying no, what exactly do you mean when you say saying no?
You're improvising, right? So like just stuff can quickly heighten and get out of control, and you just don't want to do something that's not top of your intelligence, basically. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, so if I was I can't think of any real examples that happened, but if I was a lumberjack, okay, who like was, I don't know, really into deforestation, like who was psyched about like cutting down the Amazon jungle or whatever like that, if that's where I was starting from, anti-environmentalist or something like that. If I'm on Improv for Humans and somebody says something that makes me crazy, like, oh, so do you like burn stuff in your house because you hate the environment? Or I don't know. Do you like break up styrofoam in junkyards because you hate the environment? Do you do you like it when animals die or something? I'd be like, no, of course not. That's not what I'm into at all. I'd try to be like a smarter version. But if I was on Bang Bang, I would just say yes to all of it. Oh yeah, breaking up styrofoam everywhere I go. I've burned everything in my apartment down. Today. Okay. I love it. And I would let it get crazier. I mean, they're both really fun, but like Improv for Humans ends up being more, you can stay in the character longer. The world can last longer. It heightens a little less slowly. This is in general. Sometimes Improv for Humans goes off the rails, but like, also Besser was like my teacher, and like, still when I'm in there, I'm like, I'm sort of trying to sit up straight and do improv, quote unquote, right. I mean, I honestly don't think he would care, but like, it's like, I want to impress Teach.
Right.
Know?
Absolutely.
When it's Aukerman, I'm like, I don't give a shit what Scott Aukerman thinks of my improv. This TV guy. Just because, Scott was never like a teacher of mine. It's just a different relationship.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Whereas some nerd like me would, for all of you, would be like, oh, I got to be good.
You'd be in your head constantly.
Right. Would be so
freaking
good.
Out at all times.
Yep. Now, you mentioned, sort of saying no, and that's a really great way to lay that out. And it makes me think of other caveats to popular notes, because one of the popular notes is don't say no, but there are certain situations where saying no is probably the best thing to do.
There's two general categories of when to say no. If I'm going to put my teacher hat on, one category is easy, and it's just like, don't break the laws of physics. Like, don't say yes to the point where you're doing something that's like physically impossible. Like, it just makes things annoying. Don't say that you've eaten 100 pounds of food and mean it or whatever. Like, just keep the laws of physics real. And I do that when I teach classes a lot. And if somebody tries to say, if somebody's like really into astrology and they're like, oh yeah, ever since you started believing in astrology, your diabetes went away. I feel like stopping the scene. I'm like, no, that wouldn't happen. That's not allowed to happen.
Right.
They could credit their astrology with all kinds of stuff. That's allowed, but I don't want the laws of science broken.
Right.
That's one
there's
way.
Certain things, and this is a nitpicky me problem, but if somebody were to get a detail wrong, that's a real life detail, like, if they say, yeah, Mick Jagger was great in the Beatles, then I kind of hate when I see an improv scene where they pretend, everyone just pretends like that's correct, but they're not using it either.
That's really interesting. That's different to me. I think like getting trivia wrong is like okay. That one's so big. if it's something that's going to be distracting to the audience, I think you have to correct it. If you say Henry Potter or whatever, you have to like address it. You can still say yes to it, but you have to explain, where's Harry Potter?
The people who aren't saying yes or no to it is the thing that gets me.
Yeah, if it's just, you have to kind of have a sense over, is the audience going to care about this? But like improv people a lot of times tend to be like really big like movie buffs or just like media absorbers in general, and so they probably have a higher depth of knowledge than like the audience is going to care about. Like, you know what I mean? Like they'll talk about like, I don't know, they'll mention Sense and Sensibility, the movie, and that someone will get the director, someone will say Jane Austen directed that movie, and Jane Austen is an author,
right,
of course, from the 1800s, and Ang Lee directed that movie, but maybe it doesn't matter. You just meant that it's a Jane Austen movie or whatever. If somebody puts like Mr. Darcy in Sense and Sensibility, who cares? Like no one's even going to notice that you took a character from Pride and Prejudice and put him in. If you do a Doctor Who thing and get like the wrong companion for the wrong doctor,
I'm sure someone would throw their drink at that. there's a nerd who would get offended.
Person, but like if the room isn't distracted by it, you're best to not call it out. So I don't like it when improv becomes like a trivia fest.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I'm sort of in favor of not getting stuck on those details again, unless it's just like distracting.
Right, and
you said like Dark Vader instead of Darth Vader. I feel like
that's not distracting. Yeah.
No, I would say that would be distracting. I would call that out. I'd be like, really? Darth Vader, Darth's brother.
I guess it is like just that. What's happening in that moment? Exactly. Yeah, if it was just sort of like, oh, clearly that person just sort of, they know it's Darth Vader and they just sort of mumbled through and just accidentally said the wrong thing, then I would just let that slide, and I think we all can just sort of ignore that. It won't be in the back of your head. But to me, a distraction is when it's like everyone seemed to notice that they said the wrong thing, but nobody addressed that in any way, shape, or form, and then they just move forward, and it's still there and in the back of our heads.
Right. Well, that's a distraction, so you got to get rid of that.
Right. Those are the situations, regardless of what, like, because I definitely
I hate mindless saying yes, just like saying yes and not doing any of the work to address the consequences of you saying yes. Like the fun is all the adjusting.
Right. Exactly.
Like if I did say Henry Potter, the fun would be explaining why there is a Henry Potter in addition to a Harry Potter.
Exactly.
Or whatever.
Exactly. Like that's fun.
Or if somebody mistakenly makes Hermione Granger, I'm using Harry Potter because it's such a well-known thing. But if somebody accidentally made like Hermione Granger and Harry Potter a couple, like someone who just is the most casual of Harry Potter fans and just assumes they are a couple, which they never were. Despite the shipping wishes of many fans, you could have a moment, just be like, and by the way, I always wanted you guys to get together. I'm glad this worked out this way.
Yeah.
But the other time to say no is when the person sometimes wants you to say no. Like sometimes the other person wants to be crazy. They want to offend you. They want to get a rise out of you. And so you have to say no because that's what they want. Like you're saying yes to them by saying no.
Right.
I was just hanging out with. I was at a wedding this weekend, and I saw my brother and his son, my nephew, who's 3. And my nephew's at this phase where he just likes, being a jerk playfully. Like he kept deliberately mispronouncing my name, and waiting for me to get upset by it. Like when I wasn't paying attention, he'd say, "Uncle Willie, Uncle Willie." And then I'd look and he'd be like, "Your name's Uncle Luli." And he loved it. But he wants me to get mad, right? Like I can't just say, "Yeah, my name's Uncle Luli." Like he wants me to be like, "No, what? That's not my name. You got it wrong." And then he would like giggle like crazy and say it again. Like he couldn't wait for me to get upset.
That's funny.
He protested. And that's the other time you say no. It's basically like, does the other person want you to say no? Do they want you to get upset? Then you get upset.
Yeah. And another.
So it's like protect reality, and if they want to know, those are the two times.
Right.
That it's good to say no.
And there's some good practical notes that are common, like you might hear someone coaching an 8-person team that if you're doing more than an eighth of the work, you're doing too much. And that's good practical advice or theory. There are some of those times, though, like if it's a show and a scene needs to get edited and you've already edited a couple of scenes, you don't want to say, well, I've already done 1/8 of the work of editing. Like the team still has to edit and is responsible of the pace of the show. So,
right. You don't want to get too literal with those notes.
Exactly. Yeah. They're just certain caveats. I feel like sometimes, and I think people can get too literal with some of these notes.
Yeah. They're all just approximations.
Right.
It's like cooking advice or something. Everything, if somebody said like, oh, you can't have too much garlic. It's like, well, yeah, you can. You can easily have too much garlic. But I know the point of that advice is garlic is often good, and it's you have a pretty wide margin of error of how much garlic you put in something. But you can push it too far, and it's sort of like, every improv note is like that.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that.
You have to have a sense over what it's trying to do.
Mm-hmm. What are some skills that you think are maybe more understated or overlooked that are things that everyone could really use more often than not?
Boy, oh boy. Well, my mind is reeling with fun. The way you started to ask that question, I was like, maybe what I think a skill that is. I don't always hear it put this way, but that like a major effect of doing improv is just sort of like deflating your own ego, like not making it about yourself, like paying attention to other people and adopting a viewpoint that's not yours and changing yourself and not worrying if you star in the scene and not worrying if you get your way. Like, I think there's a general ego deflation that happens in improv that's pretty rad. Like, I think people who do a lot of improv and are good at it just tend to be nicer and more chill in like group situations. They're not. It punishes show-offs.
Yeah,
and so it diminishes, and it also punishes people who try to do heroics or think that it's their responsibility to fix everything. So I would say like an underappreciated skill of improv is like deflating your own ego, like walls down. Like it's a group game. You might not have anything to do in this group game. Relax. That doesn't mean you're bad. Maybe you made space for somebody else. Like I think that's rad. But if you want like a more like underappreciated skill, I would say here's a real specific. This one's so specific it's dumb. Here's a real useless one. I think somebody makes a confession, right, in an improv scene. Some character says like, I have to tell you something or whatever. I have a confession to make. That happens all the time. I think a skill is hearing it and being like, you know what, I already knew that, and then immediately beginning to yes and it. Not to undermine them, not to steal their thunder, but just so that you can immediately begin yes-anding it.
Right.
Like, don't waste time being surprised. Just be like, oh, I wondered when you were going to tell me that. And that's why I made you this cake or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, I've always noticed you did X or Y or something like that. I learned that from this group called Outlook of the Poet, which is John Gabris, Gavin Spieler, and Ben Rogers. They frequently confess things to each other, and routinely the other characters will go like, we knew that already. And I'm always like, God, it's so funny. And it doesn't really take anything away from the confession. Like the information is still part of the scene. I was like, ooh, that's fun, baby. So I don't know. Is that a skill? Like pretending you already knew a confession? That's my skill that I'm saying you should be good at. Not you, but like the general you, the people listening.
What are some characteristics of your favorite improvisers? Like things that you've noticed in all of them that are, good things to have.
What do I love? I love, people who can like turn on a dime emotionally. They just are quick to change emotions, just like with a ton of agility. They can go from neutral to totally happy to completely sad to hopeful to hurt to excited, just like just from syllable to syllable if they had to. They can change that energy like right away. So that's a skill I really admire. Turns of phrase I really love, like, you know, people who just have a knack for unique phrases, or just they love words enough that I like when you said gobsmacked earlier, for example. Like if somebody in an improv scene was just like, well, I'm gobsmacked, I would just be like, ooh, I love it. I saw years and years ago, but I saw some scene where it was a bunch of policemen in a precinct, and they kept referring to the commish, like the commissioner of the department, like, wait till the commish gets here. For some reason, it was so funny the way they said the commish. And like the commissioner came in and he said he didn't want to be called the commish anymore. Like he felt like it diminished him, and they were like really into calling him the commish. And I guess that doesn't necessarily sound like the funniest improv scene, but boy, it got me good.
You know, you mentioned that in your book, How to Be the Greatest Improviser in the World, for you listeners who don't know about that awesome book. And I got a kick out of it because for whatever reason, that TV show, The Commish, stuck in my head, and it just sounds funny to me too. I don't know what it is.
I don't know what it is either. Like, I think the show was out when I saw this scene, but it was just a funny thing to focus on.
Silly stuff like that in improv is so great.
I love words and turns of phrase. What else do I love? I love people who I'm a sucker for great object work. I can't do it, but people who are sort of like adept at, you know, pulling a cane out and walking with it, or clicking a ballpoint pen and writing on a clipboard, and you know, taking a blender out and making a smoothie, all that stuff I'm a sucker for. I'm on an improv team with a guy named Jim Woods. He's really good at object work, and when he starts into it, he wants me to talk. He wants the scene to begin, but I'll sometimes let him go because I'm like, no, man, I'm going to watch you make this smoothie. This is fun.
Yeah, I have recently wanted to do actual chopping, like preparing food, because everyone does the food thing. If it's like, suggestion of kitchen, okay, and then they immediately start cutting, but they cut so like laser fast or something that's like that's unrealistic. I want to cut in a scene the way I actually do when I'm preparing Blue Apron, you know, like where I'm like terribly cutting and I'm just like overly worried about cutting my finger. That's what I want to see in the scene, because that's real.
That's crazy.
That'd be the silly little thing that I would enjoy seeing, is somebody struggling to cut a potato up in an improv scene.
That's kind of like advanced stuff when you start getting like particular about how you fry your eggs in your improv kitchens. You know, that's how you know.
This person's been doing improv too long. No, yep. How long have you been in LA?
5.5 years.
Okay, and you were in New York performing improv for how long before that?
It started in 2000, so 13 years. 13 years.
Yeah, so you have seen how UCB has grown a lot, and you've seen changes in improv. That's correct. And also you've seen people, and maybe even yourself, get in and out of ruts. Because sometimes you can go a little bit, and you just need to, you talk about that in your book, about one night feeling like you wanted to quit after a show you weren't happy with.
Oh, man. Thanks for reading my book. That's so nice of you.
Oh, well,
it's hard to read improv books. I read a ton of them, and it's like I always had to psych myself up to do it. I was rarely like excited to dive back into the improv, even when they usually were good and I got something out of it. But you got to sort of willpower your way through these sometimes. So thank you for doing.
For sure. Oh no, your book is an easy read, and it's insightful. I think it's a good one for people to check out. And there are a ton, and I have read a ton, but this is definitely one that if you feel burnt out on reading improv books, this is one that you can get through and still get stuff from.
Oh, good. I hope that's true. I wanted it to be something where you've already done it for a while, and you need some new ideas to kind of reinvigorate stuff.
Yeah, I think it's perfect for that.
Yeah, so people get in ruts, and I don't
Right.
know.
So how did you manage that if you went through a rut?
I mean, I'm always, God, how do I do it? Well, the most obvious way is just to take a break. You might just be sick of improv. Like maybe you just need to do something else, like take a class in something that you're bad at, and you will miss doing this thing that you have some aptitude for. Go to see comedy of another type. Go to watch some stand-up. Go to watch storytelling or something, and like, you just, your farmland has grown fallow. You need to rest it for a harvest season so that the nutrients come back. That's one way. Another way is play with this is easier said than done, but probably you have people that you do improv with that make you feel good, and they might not be your regular team, so get your friends together and do improv. Like I just have some people who just make me smile all the time, and there's a guy named Johnny Schwartzbein out here in LA, and I've never done an improv show where I'm not in a good mood after.
Oh, that's nice.
And so I just I'll just grab those people. Jim Woods I mentioned before, Eugene Cordero. They're just people who like. I mean, I'm pretty lucky. Almost everybody I do improv with is pretty great and really nice. But some people, for whatever reason, I'm really grinning about. Another way to get out of a rut. Sometimes, though, I think this isn't. So those are like the emotionally nice ways. Also be kind to yourself. Be patient. Everybody gets in ruts. You should wait. But sometimes I do think this is counterintuitive, but the way out of a rut is work harder. Like you got lazy. Like you're missing something. So probably the fundamentals. Probably you need to do the fundamentals better. Stop swinging for the fences. Just get a base hit. Just say yes. Just react. Don't try to be a hero. Keep it small. Find joy in the small things and get. I bet. If you're in a rut that lasts for multiple shows, you are doing the fundamentals wrong. Probably. And ask someone you trust to watch you. Someone that you know is nice and not a jerk.
Yeah.
I've asked Sean Diston to watch me do improv sometimes, and I felt like I'm in a rut. He's a terrific improviser and a terrific coach, and we're also friends. I know he's not going to make me feel bad. He'll take that into consideration when he's giving me advice, which I appreciate.
That's
give me. I'll be like, watch it. Just give me something to work on. I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know what I'm missing. It's not that I think I'm the best. I don't, but I'm sometimes blind to whatever I'm doing wrong.
Yeah.
It always comes down to say yes more, commit more, react more, be more truthful. It's always the fundamentals. That's always what it is.
That's some life hack level good advice, especially getting someone to just watch you because it's an outside. It's not your coach. It's not someone else on the team.
It's your advocate.
Right.
You're asking someone, hey, watch to help me. I need something here.
And good advice too, because I picked this up somewhere. Someone was saying, give me something that I can work on, and also give me something that I can do better at. If you don't have something I could get better at, don't just give me the positives. Like he was basically saying, I don't want you to just blow smoke. I want you to actually give me some thoughtful advice on what I need to get better at. And, I don't, it could be so easy for someone to give feedback and just say, oh, and everything's good. You're doing fine. And it's, it's really
they give you a very
your
general
teammates.
note or something.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. You really want to get the, both sides of the coin there.
Sean, when he watched me, told me, be more physical. Like you're standing in every scene. Your body language is the same in every scene. And that hadn't even been on my radar. I thought it was going to be something like be more emotionally committed or, I don't know, something else. And I was like, oh, well, I wasn't even paying attention to that. Maybe that will unlock something. I'll try it. And it did feel good. I tried to just be more physical the next show.
And how would you advise someone, because there are a lot of people who can't necessarily take advice. Well, I won't say can't. That's too strong of a word. But maybe they have a hard time receiving constructive criticism.
Well, then you just need confidence. Just like
right.
We're talking about getting out of ruts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you just gotta feel good. You gotta I mean, here's the other hard advice. The only thing that makes you feel better about it, improv, is doing a show that goes over well.
Mm-hmm.
So do more shows, because then your odds go up of hitting one that goes well, and then you'll feel better.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you sort of can't think your way out of a rut. So
right.
Do another show, and if it's good, you'll feel better. I mean, I guess that sounds obvious, but like, don't sit at home and try to analyze your way out of your problems. Like, get on your feet, do a show.
Yeah.
Shake it off. I bet.
Yeah. You've been teaching. Are you still teaching now? I know you've taught
Yeah,
before.
I teach like 2 classes a week.
That's awesome. That's good for the students of LA.
I hope so.
What have you seen that's changed?
I teach them bad stuff on purpose. The first thing I say is, okay, everybody, whoever is the most sexist is the funniest. All right, everybody get
up. What have you seen that's changed since 2000 when it comes to how people approach teaching improv?
As an old straight white dude, I think the thing that's most noticeable is how people are more careful about offending, what's the word? Just like not the majority, like just POC women, just like trying to be more sensitive about the consequences of like boorish behavior. That's maybe the biggest change in teaching. Like, it used to be, for better and for worse, both. My first classes in New York were from people who had only been doing improv for like 2 years, because the UCB had only been around briefly. So outside of the UCB themselves, nobody in the UCB community had done improv for more than 2 years. So whoever was coaching you in 2000 was at most a 2-year veteran. So people didn't know what they were doing. Like, they didn't have a lot of stuff figured out. They were kind of flying by the seat of their pants. You would do a scene and they would try to express why it looked bad to them, or they would suggest what they would do. It was way closer to an apprentice system. There was a good side to this in that there was fewer rules in your head. It was more like kind of going by feel. But that could be good. Bad side was like they just didn't have as much insight as they do now.
Right.
Like, improv was not as good back then. But another sort of unintentional consequences, it was the Wild West. Like, you would take a class and your teacher would give you notes, and sometimes the notes would just be bad. Like, they just didn't know how to say it.
Yeah.
And it was such a common occurrence that you had to just like take it. Like, you didn't argue it. You just kind of in your own head, it'd be like, well, I don't know what that means. I can't quite use that note. Or maybe this teacher is bad, but that was like part of the deal. Like, you just had to do enough classes and practices that you would just by sheer brute force get better.
Right.
And it meant that it was less efficient, but there was less nurturing, both good and bad. In recent years, it's more common for a student to be like, I didn't understand what you're saying. I don't know how to apply that. Or I read the individual notes you left for me. I don't know what to do with them. And sometimes I have to say, yeah, I don't really know how to put it. Like,
right.
I don't know how to say it any better. It's not that I think you should understand me, but I unfortunately don't know how to say any differently what I'm saying. But sometimes they push, and I do come up with it. So, and there's also stuff like, I felt very uncomfortable with how aggressive this person's character was. They were like a toxic, bad person, and it bummed me out. And in the old days, it'd be like, well, fuck off. Who cares that you were offended? And now it's kind of more like you have to think about, would the audience be offended? Is that distracting in the same way that a bad trivia fact would be
Right.
distracting. Like, do people want it addressed that it sounds like that character is about to go off stage and torture a dog? Like, do we have to talk about that?
Right.
That's kind of, I guess there's like a sensitivity that's both good and bad. Like,
Right, yeah.
be aware that the audience is affected by treatment of like different races, genders, ages, sexuality, that they're clocking that stuff.
Right.
And so you have to be conscious of, don't be cavalier about like toxic behavior, I guess. That's kind of like the newest thing.
Yeah,
And it just
that is
used
a
to,
new thing, yeah.
It also just used to be all white dudes. Like in 2001, it was like there was no POC, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can think back and count on one hand the number of non-white members of the UCB community from like 2001. And it was almost no women.
Mm-hmm. And that's drastically different now.
It's drastically different. And that's good. I mean, it was very insular.
Mm-hmm.
It was very just like you could have an improv scene in 2001 where you're making fun of somebody for not being into the Beach Boys or something like that. As if that's like the most ridiculous thing. It would be accepted by the audience and the improv group. Oh, that is a suitable topic of mockery.
Mm-hmm.
And now it'd be like, so big deal. They don't like the Beach Boys. Who gives a shit? Like, so they don't have the taste of a 50-year-old man. Is that so bad? Like, that's not even interesting. In a good way. Like it's like, yeah, there's lots more cultural viewpoints in play.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Like, I mean, it's still pretty white dude heavy, but it's given how much it was in those days, it's way different.
Yeah.
And so that also means that people are not always on the same page with stuff all the time. And this is also true of getting older. Like, my relationship to like Leonardo DiCaprio as an idea is different than someone who's 20 years younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I'm like, oh yeah, he's that good actor kid that girls like. And to somebody 20 years, it's like, oh no, he's one of the biggest movie stars of all time and an absolute institution. And he's looking puffy lately, and it's sad.
Oh.
Or something like that. I don't know. Like it's like we're not on the same page with what
Exactly, yeah.
Leonardo DiCaprio means or whatever. And so it's like, it's going to take a little more work on stage for us to know what we're talking about. But that's kind of cool.
Yeah, there's this nuance to it to where there's a good side and a bad side to some of what we're talking about here. And it's just kind of knowing, I guess, the funny way to approach it. But sometimes it can be a distraction the way people try to address it. Like someone could be acting absurd, like they're playing an absurd character and they're being absurd and everyone knows that they're being absurd. However, there still needs to be a little more wink to the audience to let them know that you're just kidding. And it's like, well, the guy's being absurd, right? Like, don't we know that? If we all are acknowledging that we all seem to know that he's being.
Yeah, there's a time when you can get too virtuous and it can be kind of showing off. I mean, it's all a question of degrees. I mean, that's what's so impressive about people who are so adept about kind of like addressing stuff but not addressing it too much, letting the audience know that you noticed it, but also knowing, but we don't need to dwell on it any more than this, or being like, oh, no, now we do need to dwell on this. This is a whole thing now.
Yeah.
I mean, that is so tricky, and it really changes from audience to audience. If it's a bunch of older people who haven't seen a lot of improv versus a Herald Night crowd, different things are going to need to be addressed.
Right.
You can go pretty dark for a Herald Night crowd, and they'll roll with it. But if it's a bunch of parents in for the weekend, and there's a kid character, and the kid gets hurt, all they're thinking about is that kid.
Right.
I taught improv in Ireland in June, and I made fun of them because for whatever reason, 3 classes in a row, I saw like 5 improv dogs get killed, like for comedic effect, like people just killing their dogs. And I was like, hey man, I got to tell you, if you guys ever do improv in LA, you can't kill dogs in your improv scenes. Like it ends the scene when you kill the dog.
Yeah.
People hate seeing a dog get killed. Like you better earn it. And they all laughed at me. They're like, yeah. I'm like, I'm not kidding. Like, I'm curious. What is wrong with Ireland and dogs? Why do you guys hate dogs? I mean, like, to them, it was just sort of no big deal. They were just like trying to make somebody a buffoon or crazy behavior. But I was like, I don't know, man.
Like SNL got in trouble with the Irish because they did a sketch in the Saoirse Ronan episode of an airline where like there are dogs everywhere, and people are like, "Oh, that's so stereotypical," saying that we love dogs so much, which seems like a mild thing to be offended by, but you know, everyone's sensitive because
just like how the
world's
streets of Dublin have like dogs running everywhere. So it was like an Irish airline that had dogs running everywhere. Is that
it was
what the
something. I think it was like that. Yeah, but I saw people complaining from Ireland who were saying
crazy.
Like, it's like, aren't there bigger problems? But
yeah, so
because there are bigger problems.
It doesn't feel malicious either. It just doesn't feel.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I don't aspire for a world where we don't make fun of the Irish for liking dogs. I don't know. Like I don't need it. You know what I mean? Like it's not a bad example.
It's not
It's interesting when you watch old comedies though, and you see which parts have aged badly and which haven't. And sometimes it's so embarrassing, and sometimes it's not, and sometimes it's bad, but you're like, well, I'm surprised it's only this bad. Like,
yeah.
Like I just saw Tootsie again, and which is Dustin Hoffman dressed up as a woman, and there's a little bit of like gay panic jokes where like he doesn't want to look gay just because he's dressing up as a woman. But in 80s comedies, the fear of looking gay was such a huge staple that it really ages badly. But Tootsie wasn't so bad. Tootsie only had a couple of moments of that, and they mostly dodged it. And I was like, man, the creators of Tootsie were sort of ahead of the curve in terms of not making fun of gay people for jokes, even in a movie where it's a guy dressing up as a woman.
Right.
I was sort of impressed, I guess.
Yeah. No, it is interesting.
Maybe I just didn't notice it. Maybe it's like super offensive, and I'm an idiot. I don't know, but
well, yeah. I mean, and also I guess
to be pretty sophisticated. I was like,
yeah, right. It's interesting what you see sometimes, and it's like, well, what part are they making fun of? And that's the thing that is, that's what's sensitive. You know, it's when you're not sure what they're or who they're making fun of.
Yeah, what's the target?
Right. Who is that? We were talking about kind of taking notes in classes. Have you noticed people just not taking notes at all, or being sort of deliberately not being into taking notes, or they just don't listen?
Oh, I mean, my own, I don't care if people take notes. I think sometimes I actually am on the side of, I think people take too many notes, and you should just like listen, and whatever sticks in your brain is what you're meant to remember. Like maybe write down notes after the class, like whatever you remember. I mean, I know that's against the grain here, but like,
I mean, so I'm the nerd who is taking too many notes. But.
Well, I mean, if that works for you, like I'm down for that too. Like I don't ever get mad when people are on their phones typing notes. And in fact, there was a brief window where all smartphones pre-iPhone, they were Blackberries, which had they clicked the keyboard click. Yeah. And I'd be like, you can't do the clicking. Like it's distracting. But then once it was a silent keyboard, I was like, I don't care. Actually, you can be on your phones. Other teachers disagree with me heartily, but I'm like, you're paying for the class. Like, you want to tune out and text your friend, I think it's bad. But like, as long as you're doing it so quietly that it doesn't bother anybody else, it's your business.
Right.
I mean, don't be mad when nobody watches your scene, like you're being a bad audience member. But
yeah.
I'm not going to babysit all of you adults who are paying hundreds of dollars to sit in a room with me if you want to ignore me. That's kind of your own thing. But and that's different than notes. Notes, I would never be offended at somebody. I would never be offended, and I wouldn't even necessarily think it was bad if somebody wasn't taking notes. When I took classes, almost nobody did it. So some people did, but it was really rare. And so I'm just accustomed to no note taking. To me, it's kind of like taking notes in a yoga class. It'd be like, well, you should be doing poses. You shouldn't be writing stuff down. You should be focused on the next time you're up.
Right.
But then again, I do remember somebody took notes in a class of a teacher I really liked and then put them online, and I couldn't wait to read those notes. I was so excited. So they can be really valuable too.
Right. I am someone who likes to take notes, but I do get in my head too much and not offended by the notes, just like trying to process them fully. And that can be a distraction for me. So I do need to sort of take that step back, maybe write down after class, like what I remember.
You sound like a real cerebral person. Are you someone who like the rules fill up your head a little bit, or?
I'm definitely thinky, and I think a lot of my processing happens off stage. But in scenes, I don't think I get too caught up in the rules. But also, like at Magnet, we're a little less on a clear set of rules. And so it doesn't, I think that's another reason why it maybe doesn't clog up my mind so much.
How many people have beards these days at the Magnet?
have beards.
Have beards on stage. How many beards on stage? I used to be, you'd walk into Magnet, it would be like half beards.
Let's
like
see.
Lewis would have a beard.
Lewis still has a beard. Peter still has a beard.
That's already.
Yeah, there's like Billy.
If that's it, then we're
beard.
not so bad.
Yeah,
it just used to be like Beard City.
Beard City. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, there are a few beards on Megawatt night, but not a ton, not half.
If it's not half, I think we're good. It got out of control for a while. People would ask me at the time. This is, I'm talking like 2008 or something. What's the difference between UCB and Magnet? I'd be like, Magnet has beards.
That's funny. I didn't know that reputation.
I don't think it exists. It's only in my head.
It's only in your head. It's the difference. Yeah. There are plenty of things that I think should be demystified about the difference between one theater and another theater, or UCB. And of course, UCB is the biggest, what's the word? A subject of that stuff.
Oh, okay, yeah.
What word were you going to use?
I don't know. Goliath? I don't know what I was going to.
I was thinking like target for being compared against. And
people like to take down UCB.
Not necessarily take down, but just sort of say, well, okay, UCB is this way, and what is IO like, or what is Magnet like, or the Pit, or Annoyance, or whatever theater, And, and I think a lot of times in those discussions, whether they're for or not super into UCB, they kind of can be reductive. Because you hear a lot of people like UCB is all about game, but then I hear Jason Mantzoukas talk about studying there or read your book, and you weren't someone who studied in IO and then came to New York. You studied
UCB only,
right? And you read your book. Someone reads your book, and it's clearly more than just game that people are learning there.
Yeah.
And it's
for sure.
It's base reality. That's not solely game.
That's right.
There are plenty of things to demystify, but what are some of the things you think are most in need of being demystified about improv or about UCB? And
well, boy, I love that question. I love it so much that it's hard for me to answer quickly. Here's the trouble. I'm a UCB company man. I mean, I love it here. I've been here since the beginning. Game of the Scene does dominate our classes, and to get on our teams, you have to be good at game and be comfortable talking about it. But then, ironically, once you get on the teams, there's lots of room to not be that player anymore. And so there does come a point where that you back off of that. And I especially think people who do tons of indie shows find that relying on game doesn't always work in a 10-minute set late night on a stage where there's not a big audience sometimes. And that sometimes you have to do, I mean, you could argue that everything is game that is funny, but I mean, like, it is not always helpful to consciously think about game of the scene and heightening it. And there's times when it is more helpful to think about a character's point of view and being invested in it or something like that, like a different approach. And so I guess the thing I'd be like, there's plenty of people at UCB who do not have the word game in their head when they do improv. They learned it at some point for sure, and they can talk that language if you want, but they don't. Not everyone thinks that way. I guess that's I think the UCB is way more well-rounded than you would assume. You know, especially at the top of the pyramid.
Right.
And improv in general, I actually do think that improv. I think that the naysayers are right about something, which is, I believe that the improv bubble did burst like 3 or 4 years ago and contracted a couple of notches, and that improv is going to get smaller in the next couple of years. I don't think it's going to go away, and I think it'll always be part of the American comedy scene, but I just think it reached its peak sometime around 2012 or something, and now it has retracted somewhat, and it maybe still be retracting, and it'll go back to like where it was 2006 or 7 or something, which is like still pretty big. Like, you have Second City and IO and Groundlings at that time, and like the Magnet will be around. Like, places that have that are established will be around, but it'll just be a little smaller. And that doesn't mean that improv's over. It just means that there's been a market correction. It just got like too big.
I mean,
it's the same way that there was like a stand-up bubble burst in the mid-90s, but stand-up didn't go away. It just like kind of shrank a little bit. So
it shrank, and there's smaller rooms across the country that happen, and it's more, like there's so much DIY that's going on. And you bring up a really good point. What you're saying is going right into what I was going to ask about where you see improv going. And I do think the part that has to shrink, it's just the way the industry works, is that thing that happens where casting directors are saying, we're only going to see people if they've studied at UCB. And when that happens, when that is asked less and less of actors, then you'll see less actors trying to get that on their resume, which will make it shrink. Yeah.
I think that'd be good. Like, those people are never happy anyway. Like, if you're only doing it to check a box, you won't like it. So there's no point of you in having those people around.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, I would look forward to that. The core of people at any improv theater are the people who just truly love it. Like, you just don't have to twist their arm to show up the next night. They love it. It connects with them right away, and you don't have to sell them on it. And that's always going to be the core of any theater community, and those are going to be your teachers and your main performers, and they're not going away. They were around when no one knew what improv was, and they're not doing it for their resume. They're doing it because it's a sense of identity. So, future of improv, I think it's shrinking, but I think that'll ultimately be good. I think it got too big, and it started to get some fair weather fans on the edges of the community and sort of like not true believers, and we don't need them. I look forward to it being a little smaller, and I don't care if more people ignore improv. There'll always be a core group that loves it, and that's all I need anyway. Just the real idiots, the real zealots, the real crazy people. Like that's all you need.
Right, and with the way things have grown and changed outside of that, I mean, maybe there'll be just more avenues for improv, like podcasting or YouTube channels and stuff like that. I mean, there was a time where the biggest pastime in this country was baseball, and it hasn't been that for a very long time now.
Yeah.
And baseball's still huge, so
right.
It's just
exactly. It's something like that.
Yeah, and there's networks that devote themselves to talking about baseball a lot of the time, and there's an audience for them. And that will happen with improv as well, where maybe it becomes more of a niche thing, but there's an audience for that. And that's all you need, or for them to be able to find you.
That's right. That's right.
This is a great time to move over into the end where we try to create something together. And it could be born of whatever we were talking about, or an aspect of something we were talking about. I really liked what you were saying about the different ways to get out of a rut.
I have a different pitch.
Oh, go for it.
Do you want to try to do improv where we say no a lot?
Yes.
Because this will be hard. Like I think we can't. I think we should be. Here's my specific goal. We should each have an insane agenda, okay? And the other person says no to anything crazy about the other person.
Okay.
Like you're crazy, but you're not crazy when it comes to me. Like you say no to me and yes to yourself.
Okay. So, so just to keep us connected.
Say no to me anytime I'm doing like hold me to the highest standard of top of your intelligence behavior.
Right.
But not yourself.
Right. So
and I will do the same for you. We're going to say no to each other a lot.
Okay.
I'm going to be more vague. Just like I want lots of no. Lots of no in the scene. I'll just see what it does. Maybe this will be the worst scene you've ever done in your podcast, but I'm curious to try it.
Okay.
I'm still going to say yes to stuff, by the way. It's not like I'm going to say no to everything. I'm just going to look for opportunities. Anything that doesn't strike me as real, I'm going to strike down.
Okay. Should we start with a question?
Sure.
Okay. Hey man, let's just get wasted tonight. Let's just go to the bar, drink.
Dude, that is a terrible plan. Are you crazy? That we're getting older, man. We have to slow down. Okay, if it happens, it happens. But I don't want to go into the night planning on just getting away. I mean, you sound like an alcoholic. You know what I mean?
No.
You sound bad. Arnie, you sound bad.
No, I sound like the fun guy. I sound like the guy who's saying, hey, let's go out. Let's paint this town red.
I don't know. Here, you know what I think we should? We're getting older. I think, honestly, what we should do is go to a nice restaurant, just us two as friends, have a nice, luxurious meal, and just talk about our lives. You know what I mean? We don't talk about the news anymore. Let's catch up
about the
on the
news?
issues. Yeah, let's catch up on the issues of the day. I feel like there was a time in America when the finer members of society would sit around and talk about the issues of the day. Let's go to a nice restaurant. We'll get some tea. We'll slow it way down, and we'll talk about our lives and the issues of the day.
No, this society got away from that stuff for a reason. And also talk about my life. That's the very reason I want to drink. That's the reason to get drunk.
No, you're hiding from your feelings. Look, you've gone through a breakup, and it was rough. The things she said to you, that was some nasty stuff. I understand why you deserve it to get drunk, but that's not going to help you. Oh. You have to sit in your pain.
Sit in my pain? That's ludicrous. What? You don't go to a hospital when you're in pain and say, let me just sit in it for a little bit, man.
What did Nancy say to you at the end? I forget the thing she said to you in your last.
The specific thing she said was, stop sleeping with my sister. You are the worst human I've ever met. And I'm like, you've met a lot of humans.
That's nasty. I mean, you did screw up by cheating on her, but saying the worst human, that hurts.
How am I worse than her sister? She should be the worst human.
That's true. Her sister is the biggest betrayal. They've had a relationship way longer than you and Nancy did.
Way longer, way more intimate, because they were growing together as human beings.
So you got betrayed. You cheated on somebody, and then she totally cut you off. So you got betrayed. I think trying to hide your feelings in alcohol, although I understand it, that's the worst thing you should do. Okay, we'll go to the bar. Okay, forget the restaurant. We'll go to the bar, but no drinking.
No.
We're gonna sit at the bar. We're gonna have club sodas. Maybe we'll play a good competitive game of darts, and we're gonna talk it out. We're gonna. You gotta. Bad feelings. You have to feel them, or they don't go away.
Come on, they're always there, regardless if you feel them or not. And club soda isn't gonna do anything unless it has vodka in it.
All right. half a beer each, just to loosen the lips. Half a beer each.
We're going to share a bottle of beer? Is that
we're going to get one bottle of beer, 2 glasses, like gentlemen.
Oh, we're not gentlemen. I mean,
we're
come
not,
on.
But we could act like it.
I cheated on my ex with her sister.
By the way, I was so impressed by that. Like, you were attractive enough that somebody betrayed their sister.
Yeah,
that's how I see it.
Well,
that's some Don Juan stuff right there. I mean, that's like legendary Lothario move. When you told me that, I was like, it's pretty cool.
Well, point taken. So you'll drink with me tonight.
I'll have a single drink. I will have a cocktail with you. Yes. Just to lubricate the conversation.
No. You want us to look good? You're just complimenting me on looking good. You look better when drinking is involved. We gotta get smashed.
I don't think that's true.
We've gotta have a keg apiece.
Bad when I'm smashed. My face gets red. I've started a fight almost every time I've gotten drunk, and I lose. And I hit on women in the most gross way. I need to remain.
No. It's
fine.
all very charming. You're not seeing yourself.
I don't know. It's the type of women who have gone for my moves. These women are not in a good place, and neither am I when I say these things.
Who's in a good place?
I went up to Kelly the last time I was at a bar and just said, you want it. That was my opening line of a conversation. I should have been thrown out of the bar.
Was it true?
I mean, it seemed like it. I truly believed that. I was speaking honestly.
What did she say?
We made out by a jukebox.
So you were right. You knew that she wanted it.
I don't know. I think that was still bad behavior. I'll have a single cocktail, and I will bring an unfolded newspaper, and we will go through the news of the day, and we will discuss the issues.
Let's drink half of a keg, okay? A keg.
Each.
And
that is an insane amount of liquid. I don't think I could do it.
We could totally do it. And if we're going to be reading anything, it's going to be transcripts to porns.
I don't know why you have those.
I'm just reading. It's just like reading the articles of a Playboy, my man.
It's the worst part of a pornography is the back and forth dialogue. A lot of that transcription is pretty subjective, if you ask me. Well, they're transcribing a lot of grunts and noises. We can bring the transcripts if you want to discuss them and what they say about society.
Oh gosh, who wants to know about society? We got to know about.
Well, we're members of it. We're living in it. Let's be like Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, just discussing our role in society.
Let's not be like them in the sense of talking about our roles in society, and be like them in the sense of getting a lot of tang.
Okay, that is part of their life that I forgot about. But 2 drinks. 2 drinks is it. I'll have 2 drinks, and then we're going to go to a library.
Okay. 2 hard liquors.
Fine. 2 hard liquors each, and spread out over. Not fast. 1 drink an hour. That's 2 hours of hanging out.
2 drinks an hour, and
in 1 hour.
Yes, and we'll be at the bar for 2 hours. We'll have 2 drinks an hour, and we will read a Maxim magazine in a Rite Aid.
All right, I'll do it.
There it is. That was fun.
It's not so bad.
Yeah, I appreciated that. It was great to do improv and have you on the podcast, Will.
Thanks, man. It's pretty fun. I appreciate it.
And I appreciate him for giving us his time and his wisdom. I hope you got a lot out of that. I had a really great time. We talked a little bit about his book, How to Be the Greatest Improviser on Earth. And if you do improv, I think it's a really good book for you to read. It's a great book to read after you've had the basics of improv down. And check out his podcast, Screw It, We're Just Gonna Talk About Comics, and follow him on Twitter at Will Hines. And don't forget to follow us at There It Is Pod on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and subscribe to our newsletter. It's free. And don't forget about the blog post on our website about every festival you can submit to in the month of October. Links in bio for all of that. Until next time, be good to each other.
The music for the theme song was created by Neil Brooks. The rap was written and performed by Nick Acevedo. The logo for There It Is was created by Jeff Prater. The There It Is podcast is produced by Jason Farr.